Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I'd like to go back to another rare arcade game experience. This one actually goes back way further than I think anyone thought a game of this design and type would go. And that is, again, racing games. I know, it's kind of a thing. I sort of cover this a lot on my channel, and from random different devices and games of all sorts of things, but this time I want to dig into the world of the arcade, and the early arcades at that. This game actually did something very clever very early on to make up for the capabilities and limitations therein of the early arcade, because today we're going to talk about a game called F1 Arcade. Now, many of us have likely played a racing game either in the arcade or on a home console at some point. If you have, likely, if nothing outside of curiosity, you've used the view that puts you in the driver's seat. Many of us, including myself, saw this as something that happened in the 90s at the arcade cabinets, like games like Daytona USA or something more akin to Gran Turismo that would put you in the driver's seat of some of the cheapest and hottest cars on the market. However, this whole thing goes back much further than this. Back before this kind of game actually could have been done. Who made this? How did it work? Well, I'm gonna do the best I can to answer this with what little information I was actually able to find on this, because it was just too interesting not to do some digging on. Well, this device was made by an engineer named Sho Osagi. I'm 99% sure I mispronounced that, who worked on a multitude of games, like Racer, which was released in 1973, and Formula X, which was released in 1975. Now, this game that he had developed, he had released in 1976 under the Namco brand. What this was a sit-down cabinet designed to look a lot like an F1 racing car game. It had the common steering wheel and gearshift just like you would expect out of a normal cabinet. However, it didn't exactly work as the same as any of those due to the fact that it was actually an electromechanical game. Yep, this harkens back to the days before full-on video games would come into play. These kinds of games were obviously mechanical in nature, using anything from chain linkages, vacuum tubes, basic projectors in order to create a video game-like experience. This game worked much the same way. What you saw on the screen was a projector image of, well, a model. Yeah, you heard me. They had a small, circular-like track model running in the back. I can only theorize, as I actually had a hell of a time finding any real details on this, that as you change gears, the speed of the model on the track would increase. On this track was another racer. How did it do that, you ask? Well, models. There were two models mounted on the top of the track, small plastic 2-inch F1 racer models that would run around the track itself, with a clever camera work projecting this scene on the display that you sat in front of. This gave you a fairly realistic, at least for the time, representation of an F1 track that you could race on. You could even have a fuel gauge, which didn't so much track fuel as it tracked time. This let you know how much time you had left before your particular race would expire. The score was determined by the amount of distance that you cover on the track. The better you drive in the time limit, the higher your score. You could easily be stopped, however, by colliding with the side of the track or hitting the opposing car. This would trigger another scene to pop up of an exploding car. This was also handled in what looked like a simple piece of plastic that would be lit up and displayed on the projection screen. It's honestly just really cool. To be honest, I kind of love games of this era. This type of game with such a simple setup that makes such a realistic looking scene on a screen for the time that it was. And it just seems so clever with how it's handled. Even with the death animation, I found it hard not to love how it functions. It's simply well-designed device using a fully mechanical system to make an immersive racing system, at least for the time, and makes you realize just how much could be done with so little to work with. This game would go on to be released in the States as well, under the Atari brand instead of Namco, being wildly successful in both Japan and in the States, and was often cited as one of the very first F1 games, with many people praising its gameplay, impressive visuals, and terrifying crash sequences. However, what do you guys think of this one? Did any of you ever have a chance to sit down and play this thing, and if so, what did you think of it? Can any of you think of any other early games like this? Ones that I should maybe cover in the future? Let me know in the comments. However, for now, I'd like to thank you so much for making it this far in the video. If you could do me one more favor, please leave this video a like. And if you haven't, consider following the channel. That helps me out a ton. Until we meet again though, have a great rest of your day, and happy gaming.